Hey guys, a lot of people are familiar with our wall over here with all of our cast iron pots and pans that we use for breakfast, lunch, dinner. We use all of these on a regular basis, but it's gotten to a point where if I want to get one pan to use, I have to dig to get to it. It's worked out for years. We loved the way this was set up to begin with. It was handy. It's right next to our wood stove. But it's gotten to a point where I think it needs to be revamped, organized a little bit better, and that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to make a new way to hang all of our cast iron. So follow along. Currently, all the pots and pans right now are held up using cut masonry nails. We kind of like the look because they're square cut. They almost look like an antique horseshoe nail. The other thing I like is they're hardened steel, they don't bend, so they're very, very strong. And because we live in a log cabin, the walls are solid yellow pine, we don't have to work with studs in the wall. We can basically put a nail wherever we want and it's going to hold. And that's pretty much all we did. We put nails in the walls and hung our pots and pans off of those. So the first thing we're going to need to do is obviously clean off the wall, and I think the hardest part of the project is going to be getting those nails out of the wall. They're in there fairly secure. We did that intentionally so the weight of the pans wouldn't pull the nails out, but now I'm left having to pull those nails out. So let's see how that goes. There's either 9 or 10 of those masonry nails in the wall currently that need to be removed. But once I get all these pans down, we'll have a much better look at what needs to be done. Now that the wall is all cleaned off, I need to start taking these nails down. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that yet, but I'm sure I have a couple tools in the toolbox that'll assist me with that. I may have to kind of bang them from all sides to loosen them up in the hole, and then use a large pry bar to pull them out. I want to do as little damage to the logs as possible. But once I get these nails out, we'll be ready to get started. If you've never seen what a cut masonry nail looks like, this is what they look like. They're fairly large, maybe 2-inch, 2.5-inch nail. And they have a square head, and they're pretty cool for a modern nail that looks kind of vintage. They're also very, very strong. They came out of the wall a lot easier than I thought, so we can now move on to the next phase. Now that I got the wall all cleaned off, the next thing is to measure and see what we've got. From one side to the other, a little over 3 feet. And the plan is to take black pipe, steel pipe, and suspend it about 6 inches away from the wall, and hang the pots right off the pipe. To do that, I'm going to use these flanges. They'll be mounted to the wall, come out about 6 inches, a little less. Use an elbow and then have a pipe go across to another elbow, to another flange. Now the beauty of log walls is we don't have to worry about studs. The downside of a log wall is although the walls are straight, the logs themselves are uneven. So you end up with, this log here is sticking out slightly further than this log here. And because of that, I'm going to have to basically make our hanger on, I'm thinking maybe a 2x6 piece of wood, so that everything I build can be square, and then that board can be mounted to the wall, and I can screw it anywhere because I don't have studs, but I do have to make it on something flat rather than just putting it right on the wall. Otherwise things are going to be not level. Trying to get a flange mounted to a rounded log isn't going to come out right. I could do it. I could cut all of the pieces slightly at different lengths to get everything to look right. But I'd rather just make it on a flat surface. That way I can cut all of my pipe ahead of time, make sure it's all exactly the same size. You know, I'm a little anal like that. I have to make sure everything looks right. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. So we'll get some measurements off the wall. We'll know exactly what we're working with. And the next step will be to find, I think I'm going to do 2 racks, one up high and one a little bit lower. So I'm going to find 2 2x6 or 2x8 boards that I can use as a backing. And we'll go dig those up and move on to the next part. Well, I found a couple of pieces of 2x6. They're a little bit wet and weathered from being outside, but I think I can cut 2 3-foot sections either from this board here, which has a little bit of damage, or between this one and this one. And then the goal is to, after I cut them out, router the edges so they look a little prettier and don't just look like boards nailed to the wall. But I'll find a rotor bit that looks decent, a router bit. And once I get that done, I'll show you what my boards look like. I finished routing the edges of the 2 boards that we're going to use. That just gives them a little bit more finished a look, so it doesn't look like I just have a couple of boards nailed up on the wall. The next thing I need to do is I positioned the flanges where they need to go on the board. I'm going to pre-drill those, get everything drilled and prepped. I'm going to be using these 4-inch lags to secure these to the wall. And before we actually mount those to the wall, I'm going to give the boards over to Marilyn. She's going to do a final sanding on everything and give it a stain, just so it looks a little bit nicer and kind of matches with the wall. And then once those are stained, they'll be ready to assemble. So the next thing I need to start doing is measure out the black pipe that we're going to be using. I'm going to need 2 shorter pieces, about 5 inches or so, to stand away from the wall, and then 2 pieces just under 3 feet that'll span across. So once I get the black pipe cut and I thread the ends, I'll just use a threader and thread the ends so that I can screw it all together. We'll almost be ready to start assembling these, and we'll see how it comes out. Well, I've got all the pieces cut and threaded. I had mentioned that the hardest part was going to be pulling the nails out of the wall. I was wrong. Threading this pipe was not fun. Not in the temperatures that we had. It's been close to 100 degrees all day today, and working out in the sun getting these pieces threaded was a bear. But now that that's done, what I'll do is I'll quickly just assemble one of these, just so you can see how it's going to go together. It's pretty straightforward how this is going to work. And of course, I'll be tightening these a lot more than this for the finished product. But just to show how this is going to go. Okay. And that's pretty much it. These will get tightened up a little bit more, but I'm going to directly under these flanges. That's where I'm going to drill through to use these lags to secure it to the wall. That way you don't see any screws in here other than the screws that are holding the flanges on the board. And this gives me about 6 inches from the board to this pipe, which, excuse my reach, if I'm hanging my pots and pans, is more than enough to keep the pan away from the walls. So the next step is going to be Marilyn wants to stain these back pieces, the boards. So we'll get those stained. When the stain is dry, it's going to be time to secure them to the wall and get everything assembled. Well, Marilyn got the board all stained, so it's ready to go. So the next thing is to make sure it's level on the wall. So we're gonna put the first one at about this height. I'm gonna put a level on it. And when it looks level, I'm just gonna use a pencil to go through the hole, mark where I'm gonna be drilling, and I'll pre-drill for those lag bolts to go in. Once they're in, we'll move on to the next board. We have both baseboards mounted, so now we're ready to put the pipes up. I've already pre-assembled the pipes and tightened everything, and we laced on, I believe 8 or 7, 8 of these S-hooks. They're 3-inch S-hooks, and they're sized so they can't come off of the pipe, but they're open enough that you can easily hang a pan on here, and then you can slide your pans around and put them wherever you want. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this lined up with the holes I pre-drilled. We'll get one screw in here just so it's easy for me to work with this side. And then I'm going to get this side lined up with the pre-drilled holes. I'll get that screwed all together and I'll show you what that looks like when it's finished. Then we'll just move on to the next one. Well, we got everything finished. It's all up, but one thing that was unforeseen or unplanned for, I forgot about modifying the hooks. And the way the hook is right now, it hangs the pan this way. And I want the pans to hang this way. That way we have a lot more room on the bar for the pans. So what I'm gonna have to do is take apart our bars, slide all the hooks off, and I'll probably get them in a vise, get a pair of a monkey wrench or some kind of a wrench on these where I can give them a quarter of a turn, and that'll have all the hooks facing in the right direction. So let's get that done, and then hopefully we're finished. Well, we got all of the S-hooks bent, so they're not quite S-hooks anymore, and we can now hang the pans in the direction I wanted, so we can fit a lot more pans. We made the shelves so that we can do larger pans at the bottom and smaller pots and pans up at the top. So I was getting ready to start filling this all back up again, and Marilyn came up with this great idea. We had some extra 1x in the garage, and she thought, why don't we put small shelves at the top of each of these wooden brackets, so it gives us a place to put the smaller pieces that we can't necessarily hang. We have like these little cast iron crocks that we use for melting. In this one we have some coconut oil, but we use these little crocks all the time, but we can't hang them. So being able to put those on a small shelf would probably be pretty handy. So kudos for Marilyn for coming up with a great idea. We're going to get those shelves built, we'll mount them, and we'll bring it back after the whole project is finished. Well, we got the shelves done. We used brackets and boards and stuff that we already had, so it was no additional expense. And as far as expense goes, really all we had to do, we bought the S-hooks quite a while back. We picked them up because they were cheap. We didn't even know what we were going to use them for at the time. We did have to buy the elbow for the pipes. I didn't have any of those, but I had a whole lot of the pipe. We had a whole bunch of the flanges, and the wood is all just cut off pieces that we had. So now that the shelf is done, it gives us a place, for instance, our bread pans that we can't hang, I can put that right on a shelf. The little carafes that we can't hang, all of those can go on either shelf. You can put those up here if you don't use it as often. But anyway, let me get all of our pots and pans hung back up and we can see what it looks like finished. Well, we got everything hung up on the walls, and I'm sure things will move around as we use it, and things that are used more often will be put in an easier to get to place. But it's going to be so much easier now to just grab what I need rather than have to dig through all the pots and pans to get to the back where something is. A lot more organized. This is just our kitchenware. We don't have our Dutch ovens and things like that out here, but all of our kitchen stuff is now a lot more organized, a lot easier to get to, and you'll be seeing it because this is one of those corners of the room that we use a lot when we are doing our recipes and our videos in the kitchen. So if you like this video, if you like the stuff that we do on this channel, make sure to give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and comment. Let us know what you think about what we're doing here, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.